Hey mamas, it's your CajunStork here, and today we are going to be touching on part 3 of our series on midwifery tips for nutrition in pregnancy and beyond. So if you have been following us, the first week we were talking about healthy habits of healthy pregnancies. Last week we talked about foods to add into your pregnancy, but today we're going to talk about foods to take out of your pregnancy. So let's jump right in. Now I'm going to be peeking over here at my little cheat sheet because I don't want to miss anything important. Let's get started. So one of the first things that you should absolutely be avoiding when you're pregnant is alcohol. Alcohol is one of those things that there are no studies confirming a safe limit in pregnancy. What that means is we do know that there is a risk of consumption of alcohol in pregnancies called fetal alcohol syndrome, but unfortunately, there's no evidence to confirm what point in alcohol consumption in pregnancy that actually causes it. So what we highly recommend in pregnancy is avoiding alcohol. There have been some studies saying that it's okay to drink small amounts of alcohol, but not to a buzz. I disagree. This is a great time in your pregnancy to just be taking really good care of your health. You're growing a developing baby. We don't want to affect any deformities. We don't want to affect their cognition or their brain development. So I really want you guys to consider avoiding alcohol at all costs in your pregnancy. Now, cooking alcohol isn't the same. I'm talking, alcohol that can actually get you intoxicated. Next, this one's so hard for me, raw or rare foods in your pregnancy. So in my pregnancy, one of the hardest things for me to give up was runny eggs and a red steak. So difficult. But really, when you're pregnant, you really want to cook all your foods all the way through. So the egg needs to be cooked over hard, and the steak needs to be cooked medium well. Medium at the absolute least, medium well. This is to prevent you from contracting the possibility of contracting a bacteria called listeriosis. This is found in undercooked meat, raw foods like sushi, or undercooked eggs. This bacteria can be extremely harmful to your pregnancy and to your baby. So it's very, very important that you avoid this in pregnancy. While we're talking about rare and raw, what about lunch and deli meats? You'll probably have heard your provider say it's important that you heat up any deli meats, hot dogs, lunch meats, things like that. But this is actually the third thing that I'm going to ask you to avoid, not because of listeriosis, because if you are going to eat it, I do want you to heat it up. Subway sandwiches, heat them up. But instead, I want to come from a different viewpoint. Are you familiar with the word nitrates or nitrites? So nitrates and nitrites are the ingredients that they put in food to kind of make it have that extremely long shelf life. Most people are not aware how nitrites break down in your body. But in a general way of keeping it clean and simple is that nitrites and nitrates actually break down in the body in a way that causes carcinogenic compounds. It can cause cancer. There's lots of studies on that. But even more so, when you're pregnant, you have all these carcinogens floating around in your bloodstream and your digestive tract that can negatively affect your baby. In addition to that, eating large amounts of deli meats, lunch meats, things like that in your pregnancy, nitrites and nitrates actually can bind to the red blood cell and block hemoglobin, which is one of those things that you need to, block iron to, it causes anemia. It can cause anemia or make anemia worse. So I highly suggest if you are going to do lunch meats, deli meats, things like that in pregnancy, that you would look for something that specifically says no nitrates and no nitrites so that you don't take those extra risks in your diet while you're pregnant. Sorry for all the dinging. I'm actually at the birth center right now in the Midwife's retreat shooting. There's clients coming in and out in clinic. It's been a crazy day over here. All right, let's move on to the next one. Soft cheeses. Oh, another one that is hard on my heart. I love cheese. I love soft cheeses. But really, unpasteurized dairy can be very dangerous in pregnancy. We're talking about listeriosis again. So if you are going to eat soft cheeses in your pregnancy, you want to make sure they're pasteurized. And the easiest way to do this is read your labels. Unpasteurized dairy should absolutely be avoided in pregnancy. You can have it postpartum, but you want to avoid it while you're pregnant. Next one. Oh, okay. Maybe all of these are going to be hard for me today. The next one is caffeine. So I'm a midwife and I was pregnant. And you never know when your next birth is or how long you're going to be gone or how much energy you're going to need. And so what I learned in my second pregnancy was, instead of cutting out caffeine, which, let's be honest, to every midwife out there who doesn't drink caffeine, high five, but this midwife needed some. My recommendation and what I did when I was pregnant was cutting down to half calf. And that way you can get a couple of extra cups of coffee in your pregnancy. So for example, when you're drinking caffeine, you want to limit it to 200 milligrams a day. That's essentially a little less than 2 cups of coffee. If you're drinking half calf and you're trying to, max out that daily limit, you can drink 4. I'm not recommending it, but it definitely helped this midwife stretch out her caffeine. I have an awesome video on caffeine use in pregnancy that you guys can look up here on my YouTube channel or down in the description below. It is a very big eye-opener to caffeine in pregnancy, and it was really hard for me to shoot because I prepped that morning to shoot this video to tell you guys that I'm a midwife and I'm not a stickler for caffeine, to actually discover some very surprising information about caffeine use in pregnancy that will absolutely blow your mind. So if you have an opportunity and you're a caffeine drinker and a coffee lover like me, I would highly recommend you check it out. Now, caffeine use in pregnancy, I highly recommend you guys stick to teas and coffees. These are natural things. And remember what I told you in your last video. Anything you're going to do every day in your pregnancy, you need to be choosing organic. But if you are, like I said, if you're going to do caffeine, stick to those. I really want you guys to avoid sodas. Sodas, not just because of the caffeine, but also because of the sugar and caramel color. If you're not familiar with the toxicity of caramel color, you need to go look that up immediately. It's a big deal. Last week, we also talked about fish. So you need to cook your fish. You can't have raw fish. We talked about that a second ago. But mercury-containing fish, the longer the fish's lifespan, the more likely the fish is going to have higher levels of mercury in it, which can affect the immune system of your developing baby. Therefore, it is recommended to avoid fish with long lifespans. Swordfish, shark, oh my gosh, I hope you guys are not eating shark. Tilefish, king mackerel. Last week I showed you guys from the EPA a little bit of how to find your fish and know how to portion your fish during your pregnancy, so you may want to check that out. And also which fish are the safest to eat and the least safest. I want you to go back and look at that infographic and get yourself familiar with it, because you really want to avoid ingesting excessive amounts of mercury in your pregnancy. Artificial sweeteners. So these are chemicals that trick your brain into believing you're having sugar. And it's not uncommon in our society, especially for diabetics and newly found gestational diabetics, to think that, well, if I'm going to give up sugar, I'm going to use an artificial sweetener. Guys, this is a no-go at any time, but particularly in pregnancy. They wreak havoc on your body in so many ways, starting with your brain, all the way down to your gut flora. My recommendation is to avoid them altogether in pregnancy, and they sneak them in sneaky ways. For example, most toothpastes have artificial sweetener. Read your labels. Cough syrups, no-calorie waters and drinks, and chewing gum. I was so bummed out doing the Whole30 in January when I found out that chewing gum has artificial sweeteners in it, which explains some of the symptoms that many of us are having, and we notice when we get off of them. So read your ingredients labels. Aspartame is an absolute no-go. The only one that I'm decently okay with in pregnancy is stevia, and I'm not necessarily saying I recommend it, but if you had to choose one, I would consider that to be the less risky, for sure. So are there any foods today that I didn't mention that you guys think we should be avoiding in pregnancy? If you have any comments, questions, you want to give me your tips, add them in the comments below. Otherwise, you're going to want to tune in next week. Let's see. Next week, we will be talking about healthy food swaps in pregnancy. And as I mentioned before, I was a diabetic when I was 15 up until I was about 19 or 20. And I definitely know a lot about healthy food swaps. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with you guys next week. So I hope you stay tuned. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.